Okay, so we talked about a lot of the different problems and errors that can go wrong with the validation process. And now we're going to go into what actually happens when we enter our data. And for that, we're going to utilize SPSS. Now, SPSS is a widely used statistical package. It's widely used in marketing research. Um, it's, increasingly now pure data scientists are using programming languages such as R and Python. As I've mentioned in the class, if I was to try and teach a programming language in the required marketing research course, I don't think it would go so well. So SPSS is pretty much a standard for marketing research classes, and it's also, um, integrated into our textbook. And it's kind of what we call, a point and click interface in that you don't have to type in code. You can go, there is code behind it, but you can actually just run most of the analyses in SPSS through a menu system. So how do I have SPSS? You really need to have SPSS on your computer, particularly when it gets to the project. So just go to Mississippi State Information Technology Services and the list of ITS provided software. You could just actually do a Google search, just type in Mississippi State software and you will get this page. It probably should be like, if you do it from campus, it'd be the first thing that pops up. And go down to SPSS. Okay, now obviously you want student use. Now there's some really detailed instructions. So again, given that some people have Macs and some people have Windows, I will just leave this to the university instructions. So there's some really detailed instructions on how to actually install and how to set up the licensing. Again, if you have any problems, just kind of I can help you in office hours, and then you'll have equivalent instructions for the Apple Mac. Um, and then you would want to collect student use, and you'd click I abide by the terms and conditions, download. You want the current version. This will allow you to download the version. It will also give you the license key that you need to utilize the software. And once you have SPSS installed, then you can just access it through your menu system. So let's just do start. And we'll go to IBM SPSS statistics. Don't need that anymore. Sometimes it's a bit clunky. It take a few minutes to load. So here we go. Now let's just imagine we don't open anything. So we've got this is the basic SPSS view. We can do File, Open, Data, and this is actually this data set is available on Canvas for this week. It's called fearofstatistics.sav. So that's the one we're going to use. We're going to click Open. And you'll notice several things. So you'll notice we have a data view and we have a variable view. The data view looks a little bit like Microsoft Excel. You have a series of columns with information in, and then you have the values in each row. So it's just basically like an SPSS spreadsheet. Now you notice all these kind of weird symbols on the top for the column names, which you don't get in Microsoft Excel, and I'll explain that in a second. Each of the variables can actually be defined in the variable view. So each one of these rows in the variable view matches a column in the data view. So you see we have gender, and it's the second column, second row on the variable view, and the second column in the data view. You'll get the hang of it pretty much. What this is just a fun little data set. It's called Fear of Statistics. So it's basically we've got all these people taking a statistics class. We have lots of information about them. We've got their gender, their major, the reason they took the statistics class, an experimental condition like how easy or hard their exam was, information on whether they drink coffee or not, number of cups before an exam, how high they are in like phobia of statistics and mathematics, results from a previous math exam or class, the score in a math quiz, score in a stats quiz, and then when they take kind of the quiz, when they take the quiz, we measure things like, I can't remember what SXP is, but we have their heart rate, the base level heart rate, nowhere near a statistics exam, the heart rate basically the heart rate before taking the exam, heart rate post after taking the exam, and then we have some measure of anxiety, again based pre and post. And then I think they take the math quiz and the stats quiz together. So they take these quizzes, and like we'd measure the heart rate before taking the quizzes, and we'd measure the heart rate after. We'd measure the anxiety before, we'd measure the anxiety after. So that is the data set. So let's kind of go back a little bit back to the slides. So anytime we add data into a computer, we want to check it a little bit. And as I mentioned before, a lot of that would be checking things like the interviewers are doing their job properly. Maybe just actually checking 1 out of every 10 interviews to make sure it's being completed properly. But once we get the data in, we want to make sure that we actually have the data properly in the computer, and it's in a format that can be actually utilized by the computer. So data entry, and again, we don't have people typing in the data anymore. Online survey, Qualtrics, it's automatically, you can download the data in whatever format you want, whether statistical software or maybe Excel format. Now, once we have the data, then we need to do a few things. We maybe need to check if there's any additional errors. We want to check for missing data. And we also want to potentially, organize the data, maybe create some new, summarized data from our existing data to help with our analyses. So here we are. We've already opened Fear of Statistics. And our first bit of organization is SPSS allows you to create new variables. So we have our math quiz score, and notice here the dot, that's actually missing data. So not everybody took the math quiz. You can see we have a few pieces of missing data for this particular math quiz. So what we're going to do is we're going to do transform, and we're going to compute variable, and we're going to create a new variable called math quiz 100. And the math quiz is out of 50. So just like I just did with your exam, which was also out of 50, well, we have math quiz times 2. So math quiz 100 equals math quiz times 2. Click OK, and you have a new variable called math quiz 100, which records kind of the math scores for students. Okay, so, a few other things. Coding. Now, if you're dealing sometimes with free text data, this has to be almost done. You now get computer-enabled coding, so AI can help you a little bit with this. But imagine, say, for example, I work for Nissan. And one of the questions on the survey was, usually it'd be done in a drop-down, but imagine that people had to write in the name of the car that they're interested in, or the name of the car that they own. And some people put Nissan Sentra, some people put Nissan Sentra S, some people put Nissan Sentra SL. So we need to kind of combine all of these. We need to group our data. Maybe we want to group for each major Nissan product category. So we want one for Versa, one for Sentra, one for Altima, one for, I think it's the crossover, the Rogue, etc., etc. In our case, so generally what we would do is we kind of get all our responses, we try and consolidate them. So we try and consolidate all the different variants of maybe Sentra into one center. And then we would have, Sentra would be kind of category 1, Versa would be category 2, etc., etc. Now our data set's pretty nice. It's already been pre-coded. So we look at the variable view, and you see, for example, we have gender. So let's click on the values. And you can see that we have value 1 is female, value 2 is male. The major, we have the different majors. Why people took the statistics class? Well, some people were forced to take it. I know you guys love to take statistics, love marketing research, would take it even if it wasn't a program requirement, but a lot of people are going to take this as a program requirement. People taking personal interest and people taking advisor recommendation. And you'd probably, think of it of inference on this data set, you'd probably think that people who are like took a stats class for personal interest are probably going to do better than the people who are actually forced to take the statistics class. And we can look at things like that when we do some of the graphings next class. And let's just have a look. We've got the experimental condition. These are like, 4 different values. And I think I would get probably fired if I set 4 different exams for you and I made one exam completely impossible. And then we have whether you drink coffee or not. So those are all the kind of coded variables. And the nice thing is, you can see in the data, for example, these are numbers, but when we start to do analyses, we will actually get the labels shown on the labels shown on the graph. So we'd have like we'd have the different majors, regions would have the different reasons. We wouldn't have just potential numbers. Okay, so what do we do with missing data? Now, we're not going to go too much into this because it's actually missing data is very, very kind of complicated. But actually, let's first talk a little bit about error detection. And it really depends on your particular software. SPSS is a statistics package. It doesn't really do much automated error detection, but we can do actual searches. We can look for missing data. We can record the number for each column. We could record the answers and also record the amount of missing data just by creating a simple table. So there are things we can do to kind of find errors. We could look if we've got categorical data. We could look for data where an unknown category has been added. If we look at numeric data, if we have salary and somebody has a negative salary or somebody has a salary of like $100 million, there may be somebody with a salary of $100 million, but we'd want to just check that data a little bit more carefully to see that it was in fact a hugely wealthy person and not just kind of a glitch in our system. Now, missing data, as I said, this is kind of a complicated, a complicated subject. There's lots of different methods of missing data. You can actually, I'm sure in our stats department, you can actually take classes in missing data analysis. The simplest thing is if it's numeric data, just replace it with the mean. So you look for the mean value and just replace it with the mean. If it's categorical data, you just kind of replace it with the most common category. So, for example, if accountancy was the most common major, you'd replace it with accountancy. Now, that's not always particularly good. There's more sophisticated, because sometimes it kind of reduces the variation in the data by always just putting the averages in. But there are other methods. There's one method called statistical imputation. And statistical imputation basically looks at the patterns in the data and kind of intelligently creates a data distribution and estimates what the missing value will be. For you guys, I think, mostly if you're online surveys, you shouldn't have any missing data as long as people fill in the survey. So you shouldn't really have to deal with this. It's a very kind of complicated, loaded issue. But just be aware, missing data is an issue and you have to deal with it before you do the potential analysis. Again, I talked about using the mean. You look for maybe similar, and again, this is getting a little bit too complicated for this class, but you're looking at, respondents with similar characteristics to the one with missing value, and then you put in the average of their values or the most common category in their values. But again, it all gets a little bit complicated. For this class, and I'll put this in the exam revision guide, just be sure that there is this thing called missing data. Missing data can have different patterns. It can be, say, on one column, multiple columns. Could be completely random. Again, this is not needed for the exam. This is a little bit beyond the course. But the best thing is when we have random missing data. If we have like one one set of people all missing question 1 and another set all missing question 2, then that could potentially be problematic. Okay, so to examine things like missing data and to examine our data, a data in a little bit more detail, we can tabulate the data. Now, I'm sure you all have done stats too. One-way tabulation just means we basically summarize by one category. So we may want to summarize, the number of people for each potential reason for taking the class. And cross-tabulation is we tabulate across 2 different categorical variables. So we can see, maybe we do people who drink coffee, and we'd look at the different majors, and then we could tabulate, how many people do drink coffee and don't drink coffee for the different majors, and then look at the association. Now, these actually relate that we have the one-way tabulation. Chapter 10 of your stats 2, we have a one-way chi-squared test, the multinomial test, and the second part of chapter 10, we have the standard chi-squared test of association. We're not going to do these yet, but we're just going to have a look and create the basic tables. Okay, so one-way tabulation, it helps us understand our data a little bit more. We can understand if we have any non-response. And it also is just like a nice little summary. We could actually turn it into a little bar graph if we want. Okay, so let's just do a one-way analysis. And what we're going to do is we're just going to do an analysis of the reason for people taking the test. So we're going to do analyze, descriptive statistics, and we're going to do frequencies. And we're going to pick reason. And we're not going to do it. Let's just do a little bar chart here. Let's just click this. And you can see here with the bar chart, we have, most people, what program requirement, personal interest, advisor recommendation. There is no missing data in this column. So we don't get any kind of recorded missing data. You see we have 100 valid and 0 missing here. So there we are. That's basically a one-way table. It just means we have one single potential categorical variable there. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do two-way cross-tabulation or two-way data. So let's go to SPSS again. And we're going to do analyze. Now this time we're going to do descriptive statistics. We're going to do something called crosstabs. And we're going to check, we're going to do the major in the rows and the reason in the columns. And let's just fix the bar graphs again. And you can see here we have, in the rows we have the majors, and in the columns we have the regions. So in psychology, 21 people take it as a program requirement, 3 for personal interest, and 5 on advisor recommendation. Now, obviously, sociology doesn't require statistics because 7 had it on personal interest and 8 on advisor recommendation, but there was no program requirement. We can look at the bar chart and we can see how different the distribution is for sociology, which is all the purple and let's say kind of light green or more. Yeah, I don't know how to describe that color. Maroon, I guess we should have maroon. It's Mississippi State, so maroon and kind of a lightish green. And then psychology, they're mostly the program requirement, kind of the sky blue. So again, that's just some kind of really simple cross-tabulations. The next thing we want to do is, this is all very good for categorical data, but it's not as much use for numeric data. So we might want to calculate, so remember going back a few weeks ago, we might, for example, continuous data, we might want to calculate the median, we might want to calculate the mean. We might also want to look at this measure of dispersion, how spread out our data is. So we're going to look at the central tendency and measures, and also things like the range and standard deviation. So let's go and let's analyze one of the quantitative columns. So let's look at the heart rate pre. So let's just do analyze, descriptive statistics, and then we're going to do descriptives, and we're going to look at heart rate pre. And we're just going to have the standard ones. We're not going to do anything really fancy. We're just going to click OK. And we have some really basic descriptive statistics. Again, we've got valid n, all 100, there's no missing data. We've got the minimum value is, minimum test score was 62, maximum was 87. And just like I'm going to report in the email I'm going to send you in a minute for the class, we have the mean is 73.85. Now, not on the slides, I'll show you actually another way of doing this. The thing with SPSS is there's, quite a lot of things you can do. So let's just do analyze descriptive statistics, explore. And let's just say we're just going to have one dependent variable. So we're just going to put, we're going to go heart rate pre again. And let's have a plot. Let's have a histogram. Get back. We don't have a stem and leaf. Let's have a histogram. And let's just do a little histogram here. And statistics, we're just going to have the descriptive statistics. And we're going to click OK. And here we have much more detailed descriptive statistics. You see we have the median, we have the variance, the standard deviation, the range of the data, which is just the maximum minus the minimum. And then, again, a little bit beyond things like, the skewness, which is the shape of the and the kurtosis, which give you kind of the shape of the distribution. And see, we have a histogram here of the data. We can see it's looking pretty, what we kind of call almost looking a little bit like a normal distribution. We could see, the mean and the median are in the 70s. The mean 73.85, the median 74. And if you have a mean and median almost equal, it generally means that your distribution is symmetric. Okay, so that was pretty much our introduction to SPSS. And next class we'll carry on with SPSS, and we'll look a little bit more about, some good practice for visualizing your data. We'll do a bit more data visualization, and then we'll have the practical.